years to prepare for each and every season?
It's always a myriad of things. I have a standard checklist that's never changing. It's procedural things over a 12-month calendar, whether it's self-scouting, trends in the game in all three phases and things of that nature. But there are also things that kind of hit me in the forehead, things that may be more intangible related. This offseason, I've been focusing on expanding my social media knowledge and appreciation in an effort to connect with today's players. And so I'm a full-time Instagram participant now. And just dipping my toe in the water because, you know, as you mentioned, when you have a job for 16 years, I don't want to ever get comfortable. Right. I always want to be working to grow and stay connected, and that's just a component of today's player and today's game that I can't run away from.
Gotta say, I did not expect that to be a part of your answer.
Hey, you blink, I'll cut your eyelids off. Don't you blink. I got you. Let's go.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to this very late night special primetime edition here of the Men of Steel podcast. Of course, with yours truly, Charles Prodigy Richey, as we're in week 3 of training camp right now. And so far, quarterback battle seems to be the storyline that continues to get a lot more speculation. Seems like we're getting a lot more closer right now. It almost seems like at this point that it is Mitch Trubisky's starting job to lose at this point. We got more on here. Ray for the Apollo seems to think that the backup position will be the true storyline within this camp. Also, we got one guy standing out on the defense in training camp so far. You'll find out who that is. Someone will be very valuable on the run stopping. And plus, we also got some latest Steelers signings and a little bit more here and some takes. And here's a little trade proposal I want to prop up to you towards the end of the show. That was tweeted out by Andrew Filipponi. A trade request with a receiver and a linebacker with a second-round pick for a former Bears player. Or a current Bears player and some others. You'll find out. Once again, you guys can always follow me on social media. You can follow me on Twitter at Men of Steel CGR for the Men of Steel podcast, and on Instagram at Men of Steel Nation, as well as at Prodigy Richey. So let's go ahead and kick things off right now here on the opening drive. Day 13 of training camp came to a close on Monday for this week. The offense won 4-3 on 7 shots. Chase Claypool, who was dealing with a shoulder injury, he was in pads yesterday and was participating. Now, the interesting thing is here, Trubisky in the 7 shots, he went 2 for 4, but Kai Hayward had a pass he thought he caught, which turned out to be bobble and incomplete, which was Trubisky's last rep on Monday. As we continue to move along here, I mean, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of reports coming out of camp that Trubisky has not been wowing it in camp throughout this time period. But you also can't deny the fact, too, I think that Trubisky, I guess have to say right now, has been the most prepared quarterback so far. I mean, Mason Rudolph, sadly as it is, I mean, 3rd round pick, has not done enough to win the starting job at this point. And it continues to get like a little bit like interesting as time moves along. A lot of people, including myself, truly thought he will be gone by the end of the training camp. It doesn't seem like the Steelers are maybe they're ready to move in that direction just yet. I still feel right now they're keeping him up, hopefully trying to get some trade value out of him. Remember, he was taken 76 overall in the 2018 draft out of Oklahoma State. I remember the prior round to that, they selected wide receiver James Washington in that same year's draft. things did not pan out well as James Washington, he went to the Dallas Cowboys right now. Remember, it was about a year ago, well, over a year ago at this point in time, where he was almost looking for a trade too. And things didn't quite frankly materialize with him and the Steelers, or enough time for him and Rudolph to get enough chemistry. Because when you look at everything that, Mason Rudolph, has done at this point, and for all he's done, he's only had 2 touchdowns to James Washington in his career. And if you look at like the majority of his touchdown passes thrown, it was split between Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster, who is now with the Kansas City Chiefs. Mason Rudolph, he just doesn't seem like he wants to like wing it out a little bit more. He still seems like he's playing it close to the vest and maybe scrambling around a little bit and afraid to take the biggest chances. And I'm at this point. I'm just really flabbergasted he's still on this roster. But then again, when you are trying to, follow up and bring another quarterback to lead this team beyond Ben Roethlisberger, you may as well treat it like an open competition. Now, when you look at this Steelers quarterback shuffle, it's definitely been an odd one to say the least in a long time, too. There have been some interesting quarterback duels. Don't forget in 1980, too. 1980, excuse me. Not 1982, but 1980. But in that year, don't forget, the Steelers did in that year, as defending Super Bowl champions, they did draft Mark Malone, the first round, 28th overall pick. Now, he was a backup to Terry Bradshaw at that point in time, for at least in our 2 more seasons. You can even argue, probably the most interesting one to date in their franchise history before they took off. You probably had to say maybe 1974, I would dare argue. And in 1974, the same year they won that Super Bowl, don't forget, they also had on that roster, they had Joe Gilliam and Terry Hamready right there. And Joe Gilliam, that season, let's not forget, when looking at that season, I believe Terry Bradshaw was hurt going into that season. But you look at what he tried doing that year before they won their first Super Bowl. Basically, he started the first 6 games of the season right there. And under his win-loss record, he was 4-1-1 for that season. The highest ever threw in those games was 348 yards in a tie to the Denver Broncos in Denver, where he had one touchdown, 2 interceptions. But then you also got more in here, with the Steelers, basically. When you look at some other interesting quarterback duels, you could definitely even argue back probably, say, in 1983, right there. Once again, had quarterback Terry Bradshaw, but remember, he was out most of the year pain with his throwing elbow. You had Mark Malone, once again, there as a quarterback. You also had Cliff Stout. But then again, you also had another one too, say, I would also argue in 1996. And this was a year after they moved on from Neil O'Donnell, who actually went to become a free agent with the New York Jets. You also had slash Cordell Stewart on there. I mean, for that year. So you had Jim Miller. Who else do we have on that quarterback list? I mean, it was Cordell Stewart and Mike Tomczak. I mean, for that year, I want to say for them, it was Mike Tomczak who played that season. Started in 1996, 15 out of 16 games, went 10-5, only to win one playoff game that year and only go no farther than the divisional round, and where they got their butts handed to them in a fog in the New England Patriots. But of course, we all remember the other infamous quarterback battle too. You could also go back 20 years ago. I mean, when you look at Tommy Max, who I believe was selling insurance, he was out of the league for a while. I mean, you had Cordell Stewart, who a lot of people expected back in 2001, who was looking to build off his momentum that year. Remember, other Cordell Stewart, when he became a full-time star for the Black and Gold, he only had, I mean, in that time, one winning season. And then he didn't have his next winning season until 2000. They barely missed the playoffs. He went 7-4, and the team finished 9-7. But he would rebound in a hurry in 2001, which was his only Pro Bowl year to date. Going 13-3 under slash right there, completing 60% of his passes, 3,109 yards, which was a career high in passing for him, 14 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. I mean, that guy right there. I mean, then the next year went 3-2, and you had Tommy Maddox, who came into that situation right there. And the rest of the way, the Steelers at that point, they went 7-3-1. He finished 10-5-1 for the season when they to win the initial AFC North division crown, as it was no longer the AFC Central. This was the first year in 2002 where they split the division in 4 formats. 20 years ago. Can you believe that? That was a quarterback battle. Then you could also probably argue as early as 3 years ago, 2019. We see it with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges right there. I mean, those are some interesting ones to date, to say the least. Now, this one, as we take a look back, I gotta admit, Mitch Trubisky right now, he seems to be going into this camp with a lot more confidence. He seems to be a lot more humble. I mean, there also is reports, though, too, that Kenny Pickett is making a lot more mistakes. But, I mean, at this point in time, too, I mean, I'd rather him get out of the system now. I'm more confident in the fact right now, this is how they got to start off. I love the way Mike Tomlin is embracing the pressure. I mean, just the opportunities, try and be different. And we're going to see how it works. But again, as long as the offensive line can block, then we'll probably see a completely different team. It seems like the Steelers are probably going to be able to have a little bit more flexibility than what they were handcuffed with Ben Roethlisberger starting under center. I mean, where Ben Roethlisberger basically had to kind of go back to doing things his way to help win him some games, where he has career highs and fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives. The only question is right now, can this team find a way to stay better health-wise this year? That's going to be the biggest key right here. All this stuff sounds great, but health-wise will make them or break them. I mean, Trubisky, I'm still having a hard time trying to envision how he's going to throw one deep downfield. I always describe Mitch Trubisky. It's like kind of like watching like a Korean pitcher in baseball, where they got that funny like sidearm throw. And my apologies if I said that out there to anyone who's watching from that country. I no disrespect by it, but I will say that's kind of like how I view Trubisky. I think he can be effective moving around the pocket, yes. But I do believe one of the things that has been highly known about him, he has been staying patient with his reads so far. That's what you want out of a guy like Trubisky. Stay patient, be able to read the play, let the play develop, especially reading plays while staying in the pocket. I enjoy mobile quarterbacks. I mean, in today's day and age, but I'm still a guy, if you were asking me to favor something, you have to have it accuracy in the pocket. Yeah, if you guys want to feel free and get on the conversation, leave a comment. I'm streaming live right now on Facebook and Instagram. We're streaming live. If you want to search for the Men of Steel Podcast on Instagram, you can definitely search Men of Steel Podcast. Or you can also hit up the handle, Men of Steel Nation is where you can find me on Instagram. And you can also type in Men of Steel Podcast on Facebook or at Men of Steel Nation. Feel free to shoot away some questions real quick here. Doing a half hour tonight. We got about, say, 15 minutes left to go here. But anyway, yeah. I gotta admit, I'm pretty impressed so far. Let's take a look a little bit more too, like as far as Trubisky's statistically and 7-shot drills. His first shot was Anthony McFarland, which was easy, while the second was not in, where he had to be patient in the pocket. He had a strong throw to Deontay Johnson in the corner of the end zone for a score. Defense would then sniff out an inside screen in the next play, and his pass was essentially a throwaway. But he again went back to the front corner of the end zone to his right in the fourth attempt. He fired a pass in the tight coverage to Connor Hayward. This is the one who I referred to earlier, where he juggled the ball and then could not bring it down, which was ruled incomplete right there. Hit Johnson once again, a nice catch and run to Deontay while looking at his initial read. He also hit Kelvin Austin on a post, but he could not hang on, and later he fooled the entire defense, hitting Gunnar Olszewski all by himself in the back of the end zone. Gruff, on the other hand, went 0 for 2. He had pass breakup by outside linebacker Jannard Avery, but Fred Neal on a nice pass to Gunnar, but couldn't hang on, and later connected to Anthony Miller in 11-on-11 as he beat James Pierre to the inside and Rudolph leading him. He was eventually out there with the third team in the goal line drill and was unable to handle the first snap from Chris Owens under center. He did quickly pick the ball up before the play was blown dead. See, now this is the thing. This is troubling with Mason Rudolph. I'm probably going to anticipate right now. I'm probably going to have to give it to Kenny Pickett as the number 2 guy. I'm just not so sure right now if Rudolph is going to do enough to like stay convincing. I mean, as a backup guy. I mean, the only reason why he probably make him number 2 guy because he knows the playbook. I mean, is it just that, Rudolph, he's a guy that they could still have him be like a guide and a good support to the starting quarterback. But again, I think you're creating an awkward situation. If Kenny Pickett does outperform him, I mean, does Rudolph get a little bit frustrated? Does him and his agent start to make some noise, express some discomfort? And why I ask out of Pittsburgh? Now, I don't think the Steelers are going to necessarily release him, but I do feel like if they do move out from him, it would have to be a trade. It would have to be for some value. Maybe a 6th or 7th round pick. We'll see. But I'm just really like trying to wrap my head around this. Pickett, on the other hand, yesterday, he had a nice throw to Kevin Rader for a touchdown play action and had a handoff to Steven Sims on an end around, which Sims walked into the end zone untouched. This came after former Steelers safety Ryan Clark, who, interestingly enough, he was in attendance at Monday's practice, came onto the field yelling for the offense to run the ball. And for a guy who was criticizing a guy on TV on First Take for yelling at him. Go figure. But anyway, Pickett, he was decisive in the 11-on-11s. He hooked up with Kelvin Dawson and Tyler Vaughns. The word on Pickett is that he looks nice when the ball comes out on time. Now, you know what, to be honest with you, I'm going to probably make my prediction right now. If you're going to ask me and pin me to the back of the wall, I'm going Mitch Trubisky first, Kenny Pickett second, and Mason Rudolph 3. I just don't feel you take a guy like Kenny Pickett in the first round, and then you keep him third on the depth chart. Not happening, in my opinion. I mean, you're obviously looking at this guy as a potential future of this team. For a guy who, I mean, was selected this year in Las Vegas as a 20th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. Guy who's broken all of Dan Marino's passing records, basically, at Panthers. And I'm just not sure if I do that. I don't want to think I want to keep him third at the coming out of the University of Pitt. And the guy who's have familiarity with Aperture Stadium. Boy, I gotta get used to that right now. I just want to say welcome here to a few gentlemen on here. Matthew 1137 and Pattern 10p _ Shytone. Thank you very much for joining here as we're wrapping up in just a few minutes here on the Menace podcast. Now I want to get into some impacts on the defenses right now. There's training camp surprises right now. Larry Ogunjobi, who actually started 76 games in his career, 16 was his highest last year with the eventual AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals right here. He has been lighting it up in training camp right there, pretty much. Rafael Powell even quoted up to saying that he was blowing up plays and wrecking havoc right there. And I'm pretty encouraged by that. Because the interesting thing is, too, I mean, Tyson Alalu, who I think just got activated off the PUP list right there, how are you going to fit, like, Larry Ogunjobi in here on this defense? Of course, I mean, you got Alalu as a nose tackle. But Ogunjobi right now is an interesting one right here. Do you put him as a defensive end? He played majority of his career at defensive tackle. Most of his career primarily, of course, was played with the Cleveland Browns. But, I mean, for a guy right here, I got to believe right now he could be effective here. I'm just wondering how he's going to be slotted in. I mean, his career high as far as, like, quarterback hits came last year where he had 16, basically. And his only career high in tackles came back in 2018 where he had 52 with the Browns right there. Ogunjobi is definitely an interesting one right here. Because you also still got to keep in mind, too, Miles Jack right here, who is going to be another guy who I think is going to fit nicely, depending on what Terry Austin's going to want to call. But then he also, too, Right now, I mean, with Brian Flores right there, being the senior linebackers coach right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers coming into this year. And we'll see how that works. It's going to be an interesting combination, to say the least. But I think defensively right now, who actually lost a couple battles this week in training camp, I like the fact that the offense is winning a little bit, truthfully. Because like I mentioned a few moments ago, this defense has to find a way to stay healthy for a majority of the season. I mean, when you think about it, Tyson Allow, I mean, was a huge gash last year when he got hurt. And I mean, for him to be out most of that season, I mean, you just saw how, I mean, effective they were as far as like being gashed in the run game here. I mean, he got hurt in the home opener that year. But, I mean, for the Steelers, I mean, the run game on defense, dead last. You have to get that improved. You also got to see how Devin Bush is going to be. I mean, they gave him a pass last year for coming off a knee injury. He's going to be another guy that's going to be itchy right there. Will he get the wake-up call this year? I mean, he almost had Rookie of the Year potential. He came up third as far as like defensive Rookie of the Year. He had 109 tackles, 72 of them solo. Seems like he was on good pace to like kind of match it up again the following year, 26 tackles, until he got hurt during the Browns game. Then last year, only 70 tackles in 14 games. So I really interesting. And he has also been a guy, as noted so far, too. He hasn't been doing a lot of talking right now. Of course, I mean, you got to think, too. I mean, he's a little bit more motivated. And probably a little bit of, like, pride got hurt, too, not having his fifth-year option being picked up. But at the same time, too, I mean, he does know, just like the rest of his team knows, it is a business. Gotta see you, like, try and get back to where you were. Can you be that tackling machine on the defense? And then more importantly, too, I mean, Devin Bush, I mean, will you be able to effectively be able to play into pass coverage a little bit, too, where you can defend some fullbacks, tight ends. I mean, drop back in the pass coverage a little bit. Remember, he had 2 interceptions in his rookie year. One of them, which was a fumble return for a touchdown. And that was in the Chargers game in Los Angeles right there. And that's soccer stadium on Sunday Night Football, which they almost blew right there. So, I mean, those are definitely lingering questions right now. But, yeah, I mean, that's all we got to say right there. But also, too, Aditi King-Wow, who's on 93.7 The Fan, who's usually on normally with Andrew Filippoli and Chris Muller, she was saying that George Pickens was the best receiver in this year's draft, despite the fact that he was the 11th wide receiver selected. And this came from a quote from a GM that he was the best receiver in this year's draft. I seemed to catch a nice little touchdown pass I heard in camp this week. Did a little bit of a dance, but the defense laid easy on him. They showed a little bit of respect. They didn't seem to mind it. But George Pickens is going to be an interesting one, too. Where's he fit in the scheme of things? But I got to be honest with you. But the X factor in this training camp, I'm going with Larry Ogunjobi for right now. Just hoping that he could be enough like a depth piece on this defensive line right now when you look at things and how they could be able to be effective here. Because defensively, they definitely got to get back to where they were. And we'll see how things work, but for right now, and then also too, Alex Highsmith, how will he continue to rebound this year? I mean, he seemed to do pretty solid last year, But I mean, when you look at everything going on right now, like I said, Isaiah Buggs, who's no longer on this team right now, I would imagine Ogunjobi is going to be in that spot right here. Or maybe Chris Wormley's spot. I have no idea. But it's definitely going to be an interesting shuffle on the defensive line, to say the least. I mean, if they want to really do great things coming up. Also, real quick, let's mention a few Steelers signings right now. They did sign linebacker Rondell Carter and waived and injured linebacker T.D. Moultrie. They also activated, like I said, defensive tackle, nose tackle, Tyson Alal from the PUP list. And by the way, Chris Boswell, he was no longer the league's highest paid kicker, according to Dale Lally. He signed a 4-year, $24 million contract extension. So there you go. Hey, Justin Tucker, I mean, at the same time, too, he has slowed down barely, maybe the last year. But, I mean, Justin Tucker, I mean, is like the guy who grabs the torch from Ann Vinatieri. It's almost Mr. Automatic in this league. So there's no denying that. I mean, I take Justin Tucker over Chris Boswell, bottom line, period. Whenever it comes to drive a stake into someone's heart or pick up a decisive victory. But that's going to do it for this edition here of the Man Steel Podcast. We're a few days away from the Steelers' first ever preseason game of this offseason when they take on the Seattle Seahawks at Acrisure Stadium. So again, if you guys want to hit me up on social media, once again, you guys can follow me on Twitter at ManSteelCGR and on Instagram at ManSteelNation. That's all always leave you. Don't be trolling, be rolling. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. I gone. Thank you for watching the Man Steel Podcast with your host, Charles Prodigy Richey, here on YouTube. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. And for all the latest Man Steel Podcast episodes, feel free to download them on Mixcloud, Anchor.fm, and SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts.